Right. Good morning, everyone. This is a submission of the urban design peer review panel. Today is September 22nd, 2024. We are going to review, we have one project on the agenda, right, Greg? Only one? Correct. Which is the Forest Park, Forest Theater. Forest Theater. But before we do that, before we review the project, we have a meeting minutes from August 23rd to approve. Ray distributed the meetings earlier today. I need a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Thank you. A second. Yes, James, thank you. All in favor, say yes.
Yes. Aye.
Yeah. Very good. Anyone opposed? No. Great. Minutes are taken. So before we start, and welcome the team that will be presenting to us, this one, as I like you as a speaker, I just want to share with you that this is a panel made up of volunteers. And we have a range of experts here from historic preservation, engineering, landscape, urban design, architecture. All of us volunteers, we work with the planning department. The goal is to provide you with feedback. We're not here to drag you down. We are here to make the every project comes to the panel as good as it can be. With positive feedback, and sometimes we point out things that can be made better. So all in the spirit of making Dallas a better city for everyone, one project. So that's the idea. That's why we volunteer, and that's why we enjoy being with you and groups like you. So with that, Ray, would you introduce the project?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The one project we have today is in South Dallas. This is for Forest Theater. The plan is a historic rehabilitation of the inactive theater. There's also going to be an addition to the south of the building. They have been working with the U.S. Secretary of the Interior's standard for rehabilitation, and historic tax credits have been used on this project. Regarding the landscape design, multiple programmatic open spaces, including an outdoor cafe, plaza, lawn for special events, and a multi-use festival street are planned. The overarching urban design principles to consider for this project: number one, parking. Although a necessary element may not directly support the pedestrian and active street front environment, we want to consider the different pedestrian circulation across the campus. Two, develop a vision for the future of Forest Theater's pedestrian environment that serves a multitude of social, recreational, and ecological needs. Integrate green infrastructure elements into the pedestrian environment to enhance ecological sustainability and mitigate environmental impacts. And three, consider how the proposed phasing can maximize the success of the development and neighborhood over time. Ensure project can remain responsive to evolving needs, capitalize on opportunities, and provide infrastructure and public amenities that support the needs of residents, businesses, and visitors as the project evolves. We've got the team here today. They're going to be giving a presentation this morning.
Introduction.
Sure, very happy to. My name is Chris Dowling. I'm the Vice President for Strategy at Forest Board. And I just want to say I'm very grateful for all the work that you do consistently to execute the mission of the mission. And we're very pleased to be with you today.
I'm Margaret Murphy. I'm with Baldwin Associates. We are the zoning and land use consultants. And thanks for serving. I did that. You're on the CBC, so I get what you're doing.
Good morning. I'm the project group for government representative on this project. Hi there. My name is Jessica Clements. I'm studying outside in the landscape architecture team on the project.
And my name is Mike Bell. I'm the managing principal of HKS and responsible as principal in charge. President of Smith County. So, I can try. All right. So first, just thank you for having us. I serve on a voluntary board on the Historic Landmark Commission, so I understand your roles as well. So we have a number of things, and I want to talk about kind of four main points. That I think that our goal initially was to take an existing cinema-centric venue and convert it to a music-centric venue, but bring it to today's standards so that the expectations of our patrons would be met appropriately. That I want to talk about, there's a number of modernizations that we've done inside the theater. And that, the fourth point, we've secured Federal Historic Tax Commission approval. But the second point, I think, is probably the strongest in that when this project was introduced to us, I thought it was a theater project. It's really a community project. It's really the importance of this theater, talking to people who have known about this theater, who have lived in the neighborhood and remember in the 40s and 50s when it was a kicking theater, the memories that people had from this theater were very, very important. I'll tell you a quick story that a couple of years ago when I was at the Martin Luther King parade watch, I was taking photographs, and there was a man about my age that just kept looking at me. And as I was taking photographs of the different of the parade participants, he came closer and closer, and he kept, you know how you can see somebody out of the corner of your eye, and it just kept coming closer. And so I turned to him and I introduced myself and said, "Hey, my name is Mike Bella. I'm the architect for this project, and we're helping to put this theater back on its feet again." And then his countenance just changed. And all of a sudden it was like, "Oh man, this is where I took my wife. This is where I met this person. This is where we did this." And I said, "Fantastic. What are you doing?" And then the next hour I was telling him, "Well, we're going to be doing this and this." This was early part of the design. So I can't overemphasize how important this project is, well past the footprint of the building, that it's 2, 3, 4 blocks in all directions. I also will say that since we have been working on the project, since SM Right Now has been brought into the boulevard, all of a sudden, instead of this being between 2 freeways, now it completely opens up to the east. And so I just think that that's the it of this project more than anything else. The kinds of things that it does 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks away from the center of this project. So, Margaret, do you want to talk a little bit about the zoning choices that we have and how we proceeded with this?
Well, so this area is a form district. And so we wanted to preserve the building, the historical building, while adding to it, because you need to modernize the theater to make it workable. For example, the space within the theater for which you can do the operations, change the scenery or the electronics or whatever comes with the band, it was very, very small. So they had to add a new building to the historical theater. But this is in a form district. Form districts, as you are aware, are meant to create a walkable district and street activating uses, etc. So we had to work with the existing building, which we could modify for a lot of reasons. It's not like we can pick up the building and move it closer to MLK or, there were a lot of reasons. So we followed the form district standards to the extent we could and modified the Article 13 standards where we had to, all with the intent of honoring the spirit of Article 13. Because it's very important that this building, including the new attachment and the plaza on the one side of it, would be a street activating, community activating use. So I won't belabor you with details, but some of the Article 13 setback requirements, transparency requirements, etc., were slightly modified so that the existing building could comply with as much of Article 13 as possible, and then as well as the new construction. I will say this, there's always a challenge because what building is located, three highways and utilities. So you have, sanitary sewer, fresh water and all that. So this architectural team and design team dealt with a lot of challenges, but kudos to staff for working with us to make it meet the spirit and intent of Article 13.
Thank you, Margo.
Yes.
So this is, and I show you the historical elevation. This is taken looking slightly to the southeast just a bit. And you can see that there's really two components to the theater. With the theater proper that had a very small lobby, and then you went into the main hall, and then filling in the block along Martin Luther King Boulevard was a number of retail shops. I'll talk about on the historical narrative, and I just really focus on the last paragraph, saying that the design development has proceeded in conformance with the U.S. Secretary of Interior's standard for rehabilitation, as historic tax credits will provide a substantial portion of the project's funding. Part 2, Part B, conditional approval has been received by the National Park Service and the Texas Historical Commission, and a Part 2, Part B amendment has been submitted last month, and I believe since this was written, all of that has been finalized. Okay. So just in context, Forest Theater is pretty much equidistant between downtown Dallas and the Cotton Bowl. Its significant neighbors to the northwest is the Cornerstone Church. St. Philip's is a little bit south and to the west. Very important relationship between the theater and the Martin Luther King Arts Academy, which is to the south. And then there's a fire station, number 5, that's across the way to the east. And then the Park Manor housing tower is also to the east. I want to talk a little bit about, just a little bit closer up, when we first took a look at this project, the notion of being able to activate and use parking underneath I-45 became very attractive to us. We have had a number of conversations with TxDOT, so that's underway. And there's TxDOT is a wonderful partner. It just takes time for all of that to happen, but working with TxDOT, and TxDOT, gives it to the city, then the city, there's a number of steps. So the important part is what you see in turquoise is the parking that is underneath I-45 north of Martin Luther King Boulevard and south of MLK Boulevard. And then the two areas that you see that are kind of in that yellowish color, those are the parking, the on-grade parking that is available on the north side of MLK. I will say that there's 2 triangular bits of property immediately adjacent. You can see my cursor. Yes, you can is back here, and there's this bit here. And TxDOT has been very favorable that when they're quote done with those parcels and they use them as laydown areas now, that would be an additional bit of property that would be available to us. There's landscaping that we're hoped to garner back up in here that I'll let Jessica speak to just a bit, that will provide an additional buffer between the building and I-45, because there's a little bit of noise from I-45. And so anyway, that's a little bit about the neighborhood plan.
Mike can see the transition while this is still up.
I'm sorry.
While that's still up, I'll just the parking slide. That your friend TxDOT is a great partner. The COG has been sort of coordinating and helped us put a return of total revenue project on the approved list for the TIP for the upcoming year. So that's all sort of in progress. The project is funded in a preliminary way. In that way, it's going to be passive. So again, the city will manage all the aspects of it. And as Mike said very clearly, this parking is on the way. It's there will be a timeline issue, because it is that's not overnight, but that's something we're really excited about in terms of the future of that site and the projects that our partners, the city, and other places are really helping us to fix. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's perfect. And then you've reminded me of 2 other things, is that, when you look at this plan, and this is the original theater here, and the addition we'll talk about in just a bit, that all of the parking, quite frankly, is coming from the north and the northwest. So this particular corner of the building is very important. We'll talk about that in just a bit. But there are crosswalks across MLK, and then across the Peter Street here, and then again in crosswalks across MLK from these 2 parking areas. So for the vast majority of people are coming from the north and the northwest to the theater. Again, this is the civil drawing just to show, you know, the locations of the crosswalks, and pardon me, because now the theater's turned, sideways. This is MLK Boulevard here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different crosswalks and then additional crosswalks, on the pedestrian side. I will also say that, the existing bus stop that is at the front of the theater has been maintained. And then we have additional parking at this plaza area here at the northwest and at the plaza in the back of the theater. This is a view, and this, I like this view because it shows the adjacency to downtown. But I will say that although this is Harwood Street, this part of Harwood Street looks significantly different than what's just a couple of blocks back over here. I mean, it's just, they feel like they're worlds apart. And Harwood Street to us, because of its adjacency to MLK, is an important street for us, and we'll talk about that in just a second. A little bit closer to the neighborhood, you see the theater and its addition. 2 parcels of property here that are being master planned, and this is the MLK Arts Academy. Now, when we talk about Harwood Street that you see that runs from north to south and really dead ends at MLK Boulevard, think Flora Street. That the entire notion of what this part of Harwood Street could look and feel like is really a festival street. The students at the MLK Arts Academy learn their craft here, and they present, you know, in the theater. So the notion of either the kids walking or getting on a bus and being delivered to the south side of the theater, that communication, that is very important to us. In the master planning effort, the notion of how you make Harwood Street look and feel like a neighborhood with the addition of what we think is going to be coming as additional residences, with the ground floor activated with a number of shops and things like that. So that from the school, this part of Harwood Street really wants to be an active street.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Can you go back? Can you show me again on the rendering where the school is?
The school is right here, ma'am. Right here. This is the Martin Luther King. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, here it is.
So on the plan south.
Yeah, my mouse and this mouse aren't. It's at the lower left-hand corner.
Got it.
And that's the Arts Academy.
Got it.
And then St. Philip's is right on the other side of the freeway, right here.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Very good. A little bit tighter to the site. A couple of things to highlight. Again, the crosswalks across MLK to the northeast, to the northwest, and then due west to the second half of the parking underneath I-45. This outline here, that is the original theater. And the outline of what we've added to the theater is set back from this primary face here and set back from this face on the east side. So everything that we have added has been pulled back, so it's not up front on either MLK or the elevation that faces SM Bryant.
Mike, one more question. Please go back to the previous slide. Where is the front door of the academy?
The front door of the academy?
Yes.
I think yeah. Front door of the academy is.
Front door is
yeah.
over on this side over here
Is there-
of the school. Yes.
Okay.
And they're undergoing a lot of construction renovation themselves at the moment.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
So, sorry, it's this touchscreen. But yeah, just to orient everybody, and this is the St. Philip's School. We have Cornerstone Church is up here. This is our theater here, and this is the original marquee entrance up here.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
You mentioned that site directly south of the theater is being master planned. What is?
These 2 sites here.
Yeah, the 2 parcels that you see, the 2 red elements, the initial thinking is, and I think that's the direction that's going to be done, is that those will be residential units, bringing a lot more residences in that core group back to this neighborhood. And the notion is, in all likelihood, it probably will be a 5/1 or something like that, either 4 or 5 levels of wood construction over a concrete base. Undoubtedly, there'll be a lower level parking structure. And so parking will be below and out of sight. But-
I will say, if I can interrupt you, Mike,
Yeah.
it's still very early. We haven't even started design.
Right.
This is all very conceptual level, and a big mission that Forest Forward is undertaking is to make sure that they're really going back to the community about that. So even during our zoning process for the zoning of this, we specifically have, these are zoned so that when we are ready to go into construction, we have to come back to zoning because we want to make sure that the community is involved in that process. So Mike has already they've already been thinking, he's very excited. So I apologize. That's
But the
where I had the project
idea
manager.
is that whatever gets placed there has neighborhood services at the base of the building so that those services help activate what happens on Harwood Street, Peabody, and all around it. That part I think is,
Yes.
that's
absolutely.
very definitely a part of the future development.
And both of those parcels are owned by Forest Forward.
Say it again, please.
Correct.
Both of those parcels are owned by Forest Forward.
Yes, indeed they are. And there's additional, and Kelly, you're gonna have to help me out. I know that there's additional parcels owned by Forest.
There's a few little ones. These are the big blocks that they have, and they're still undergoing a lot of work to acquire. But I know everybody gets very excited about residential, and so I just didn't want us to derail and start talking about it
Fair enough.
as excited as you all are for that next plot of land.
We've also acquired the triangle lawn to the north across the MLK from the theater.
Up here.
Yes. Used to be a liquor store there. So.
All right. Some of the elements that we have here, I think I've pointed out the footprint of the existing theater is that squarish block closest to Martin Luther King Boulevard. The existing parking on MLK, that kind of diagonal parking, that in and out. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Banna. Those are, we're maintaining those, and that satisfies in part some of the accessible requirements. And then we have additional accessible requirements to the southwest, excuse me. The thing that we very much like is the activation along MLK Boulevard. The community room, which is at the southwest, I really see that that's a room that's going to be used almost on a daily basis. Think community space. Lamaze classes, judo classes, the computer class, all kinds of community-based events can happen in that community room. Where you see the circle, that is the original entrance to the theater, and that will obviously remain as the theater. But in between there, that's what was the original retail space, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. And what we've added, like I said, is at the south and the southwest corner of this building, taking up quite a bit of what was originally parking space and replacing it with building. And you see the large grass area and the plaza that I'll let Jessica talk about in just a bit. Any other questions before we move? All right.
Here's a pretty picture.
Yeah.
So really our job as landscape architects on a project like this is to take the energy that Mike and his team are working on inside of the building and kind of pull it outward. We really feel passionate about the connective tissue that the spaces we design in, how that relates to the community and to the district. So I'll talk about a few things that are evident in the landscape design that I think is relevant to this project, or most relevant at least. First and foremost, I think the programmable space in some of the elements that we've designed. So just kind of plan south of this image here, where you see the plaza and the lawn space. If you know the site, that's actually parking right now. So it's a giant concrete parking lot. And so being able to convert that to something like a flexible lawn and a plaza that can be used for markets or events or anything that the community would want to do sort of on the outskirts of the building is really a big win, both for the theater itself and for the community. We've kept those very intentionally designed as flexible. We really like to try to shape the space in a way that makes it feel good if it's not being used for a large group of people, but it can be used for a large group of people. So out on the lawn area, we've designed for spaces that could be, where a stage could be installed and you could do a performance outside. And then again, that plaza space, the trees in there, which will provide shade, also very critical for people wanting to clean the space. Our space just far enough apart that you could put a 10 by 10 tent in there and do a pop-up market very easily. So that really speaks to what's going on the south side of the building. As Mike has talked about, as we turn the corner of the building along Harwood, it's an interesting street, right? So it's deadening into our space, starting to become a little bit less of a through street with the traffic that you would normally see on the street, and hopefully turning more into a plaza. And we've got some images that we'll talk towards that a little bit. It happens to also be where the loading of the building is, and so we're trying to mitigate several things going on there. But the idea is that as it intersects with MLK, that it could be a very powerful space to turn into a flexible festival street. And if there's an event going on like the big Martin Luther King Day parade, we could pull folks in that side of the space if we shut down the street as well. So there's some flexibility with that as well. And then as it punctuates out on MLK, we've tried to create that as a very welcome, open corner to the building to really pull people in. I think streetscape design is very critical to what we're doing here as well. And we paid very close attention to what's in the form-based code, as well as just our own best practices of landscape architecture. So street trees, sidewalks, all of those things you cannot take for granted. They will make pedestrian connectivity within the space and also to the spaces around it. We are actually exceeding the amount of trees that are required by code on the property, both within the street and within the plaza and spaces around the building. This is super critical as it relates to the urban heat island effect and some of the greater missions of the city to increase the canopy coverage. So we're very proud of that. Along with trees, we've got lights, bike racks, trash, seating that's placed on every facade of the building out at the right of way space to make that more comforting to the pedestrian. And then out at the entrance, real quick, I will highlight over there as we turn the corner towards the north side of the building. Our goal there in terms of landscape architecture is to use materials that relate to the historic fabric of the building. So really to kind of tell that story through the landscape architecture and the hardscape. So you see the big circle of red is actually an extension of the red terrazzo that's going on with the building. And then there's a tiny little corner there adjacent to the entry plaza that we're hoping will be activated by the retail use within the building. So there could be a cafe, outdoor seating space if there was a coffee. I think it's been a discussion that the retail could be a coffee use in there. So again, just looking for all the ways we can take the energy inside of the building and really pull it out and activate the street with it. And think that creates great spaces both within the building and within the community. I guess maybe just one other thing I'll highlight real quick that I almost forgot, open space. In terms of city requirements and code requirements, we are exceeding the amount of open space on our site as well. So that's evident in some of the spaces that I've already talked about.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that the green area that you see to the south is slightly rolling, from north to south. So I see that there's going to be kids on that green space rolling on a regular basis. It's just it's a green oasis that just simply wasn't there previously.
And if I might add, it is walkable to the neighborhood to the south. And we thought they have been very deliberate about including accessibility. So, walkers, wheelchairs, strollers and stuff, there is that built into that plan already. And it takes advantage of the elevation changes there.
And just as I talked about it, I think the plaza that is at the southeast, quite frankly, we designed it so that there could be art fairs, there could be food crafts, there could be children's exhibits, all kinds of things. But we see that the south side of the building is going to be activated during the spring and summer months, almost on a weekly basis. Okay, a little bit more detail to that. Then I want to talk about the extension of Harwood Street and add to what Jessica just said. On the west side of the building, we have our truck access that you see here, where the trucks can be here and back up this way, or come in and back up. There's trash service back up and through here, accessible spaces. But really focusing on this part of Harwood Street that dead ends, this is the area here at creating a plaza. And remember, the majority of the people are going to be coming from the north and the northwest. So this is my thinking. For the first time users, everybody will come here and follow most of the people to the front of the theater where the traditional entrance was. The second time, third time users will come back this way and enter the theater in the south lobby, because it's a bigger lobby to enter into both sides. And, you know, these were kind of inspiration photographs of what we think Harwood Street in the future, quite frankly, will likely feel like. The notion of having food trucks for the MLK parade that happens, and but these are the kinds of images and really our inspiration of what that part of Harwood Street, all the way from here, you know, connecting to the MLK Arts Academy, can look like in the future. Some details, you want to talk about this just a bit?
Yeah, yep, so it's a street section through Harwood, we were just looking out on the plan view. So you can see, you know, it's definitely a working street where we're allowing for the function of the building to exist, but then when we can shut the street down, or when that part of the building ends up being accessed for loading, it becomes a very friendly place for the pedestrians. So we've allowed for wide sidewalks, particular to the theater side. You can see we have an 8-foot sidewalk there, which hopefully pull people through in a nice and comfortable way. You can see the lighting standard in there, trees, all of which make the pedestrian feel comfortable on the sidewalk. But, you know, just makes the volume of the street feel pedestrian friendly. You know, all of these little design elements really cater to the scale of the person as opposed to just the scale of the car. However, we make it function for the car. Correct. And then when we shut it down, you can see there we've got, you know, what it would be if you have a food truck there, this kind of thing. And
that spit of property I was talking about that's currently owned by TxDOT is back over and through here. There's a fair amount of trees there. We'd like for some, you know, in the future to supplement that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Can you go back one slide where the large plan was?
One more.
One more, please. Thank you.
That's here.
Yes.
There we go.
So did I hear you say that there's a community?
There is, yes, ma'am.
Right
I'm sorry, this space right in here, there's an entrance in here, that this is the space that this community room can be used in any one of a number of programs. It's a fairly large space. It's a little bit taller than the adjacent retail, the original retail spaces back here. It's got windows to MLK and windows to Harwood Street, but it's a flexible space. And we designed it such that if indeed there is a large Christmas program, that the back of the stage is the stage is back in here. So in addition to the dressing rooms, if you have 100 kids dressing, you know, that can happen in this space. If it's between performances, it can be those community spaces like we talked about, flat floor. There are mirrors on one of the walls, excuse me. So it's a multi-purpose. There can be banqueting that happens here. Pick a function, I think it can happen in this space. Fair enough?
While we have this plan up, that's okay. While we have this plan up, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how much work our team did going into the design and the use of Harwood. I think Mike has, done a really good job in talking about how we envision the street to operate, and how Jessica very thoughtfully with her team is using all of this together, knowing that this is kind of our back of house, our loading dock, but we wanted to be able to activate this for the community. One of the things that from a technical standpoint, that Margot had alluded to is this is still a public street that we really had to contend with. Ownership did look at purchasing this street in order to really be able to open up the possibilities there. Unfortunately, there's a huge amount of utilities that run through that street. So putting that into that are public utilities that serve the greater area. So that was the one thing that the ownership looked at purchasing that so that we could further explore possibilities within that, but that was just something that was not recommended to take over ownership of really having to then manage maintenance of those utility lines that run through there. And so the team worked very diligently with city staff to figure out a way to make Harwood, while it's not owned by the Forest Forward Group, they worked together to make sure that this would be an activated street while also making sure that it was respecting city standards, using the materials that were already approved by the city, and making sure that there was a good uniformity and collaboration between the two there. So a lot of technical difficulties that went into this street that really limited our possibility, but it was just a really great collaboration between staff and then our design team going into that, which then ultimately the overarching idea there is to really activate Harwood, make it community accessible, and be able to make the building feel very much 360 activated all the way around. So it looks beautiful, but I just wanted to add a little clarity of how technical this component of the project really was for us.
Yeah, all of the technical requirements for trucks, either panel trucks or larger, coming and going for load in, load out for the shows, trash trucks, delivery trucks, all of those technical requirements of turning radiuses and such have been respected and are in accordance with City of Dallas requirements.
Right, and there will be additional screening on the main doors and stuff, so it doesn't look like back in house 24/7. Okay, because that was part of it. So it's masked.
I'm afraid to move on.
That's okay.
All right, we've talked about this here, and Jessica did that. This is kind of a view, a little bit of a bird's eye view as you're coming to the north end of Harwood. So you can kind of see that this is the reception plaza. Oops,
There's a space.
what's going on?
There we go.
This is a view, a bird's eye view at the north end of Harwood. You can kind of see that this is the reception plaza that we have for the folks that are coming from the north and the northwest. I'll show that in just a tiny bit more.
That was the community room that Mike had discussed. But yeah.
This is looking at in the other direction. So you can see the truck dock, and you can see the width of the street and how we've accommodated all of the turn radiuses, the notion of having food trucks along here. There's no parking on this street. That's not what we're espousing in any way, shape, or form. There's a bit of delay between. Here we go. Let's try this again. There. So this is as you're walking in, and the community building is what you see with the glass that's on the corner with the green accents, and the notion of for the culture, the naming of that building. That's where selfies are taken. That's the formal or informal entrance to this. What you see to the left of for the culture, there are graphics along that wall that are to be determined. But this is a good image that then shows the retail frontage that is along MLK and the activation that's expected there. And the notion is that the spaces there will be education based. Think mathnasium or any one of these kind of community tutoring kinds of spaces that can happen along the face there. This is the southeast corner of the building, and this shows a notion of what this plaza and everything that Jessica was talking about previously of the activation of that street and the greening of that area. And, where you see the people walking in and out of the thing, that's really the plaza. The plaza where we've designed it so that there can be art fairs and music functions, kids can be out there playing. And then my favorite grass area to the south of the building proper, and we'll talk about that large window in just a bit. That's really it's this as opposed to existing concrete parking that Jessica noted.
I think those are Daniel installed trees. In that rendering, but obviously they'll get a lot bigger and then they're,
Right.
of course, create a lot of shade within the plaza.
So there's an important entrance on this side, but there's also one on the northeast corner. of the
Yes,
district, correct?
Yes.
So if you are going to a performance, are you going into the northeast corner or here?
Again, I think if you're new to the theater, most of the people will come in that formal entrance, the original entrance through the historic lobby. But if you're a second, third time user, you'll know that there's another way to come into it. And I'll show a rendering of what that lobby space looks like. Think about it this way, in the 40s and 50s, the quote lobby for theaters, cinemas, was teeny. It was, you basically got your ticket outside at a ticket window. You went through the doors, grabbed your popcorn and drink and went in. That was it. So the lobby was really, really teeny. And so in order to make it for current patron, for the pre and post production performances, there really needs to be a lobby, and I'll show that in just a tiny bit. But the answer is in both directions.
And to kind of account for that, then the design, we're not necessarily digging into the details of the building architecture itself, but interior, regardless of what entrance that you come and access the building by, the interior lobbies connect together very seamlessly. So when you come in, whether it's from the north end or the south side, you're not going to feel like you don't know where to go. And it really connects very, very easily to both.
That's a really important point. We've always termed it as the historic lobby and the south lobby, but they're connected. And when it's just what it says, it's historic, looks like it. We've maintained the Art Deco look and feel, and then been a bit complimentary on the south lobby to what the historic lobby was.
This government, as I'll say as well, part of the story of this building is that although it was a beating heart of Black culture in South Dallas for many years, it started as a segregated theater. And the background where, for instance, our president, Mr. Watney, where her father would have gone to see movies here, where she did when we were segregated, he would have to go to the back. So part of what we've done is not only to throw an historic lobby in our vision to a celebration of this incredible sort of reservoir of Black culture, but also reappropriated and redignified this entrance and acting for the neighborhood with that vision in mind. As we tell the story of
This historic entrance, right?
the historic lobby will be, we'll see that in this is the south lobby.
This
Got
is,
it.
yeah.
Thank you.
Northeast entrance is the historic lobby and
That's correct.
south.
Yes, sir.
He's talking about reappropriating the south.
That's correct.
Got it, thank you.
We
It's not about the landscape.
is, I'm sorry.
On the landscape plan, it has the layout. You can see it.
Yeah.
We kind of like to term it as the historic lobby that recalls the past, and the future is in the south lobby. And there's kind of the artwork that's going to be on the walls kind of tells that story. A little bit more on the street elevation at Harwood Street. And I'll move to this in just a bit, but I'll go to these plans here just real quickly, and then we'll go to the 90-second video. But if you can follow me, I'm just gonna. So in this space here, this was the original retail block. And that's where the florist was and the recording studio and things like that. This is the space, I'm sorry. This is the space here where there is intended to be a coffee shop. And then these other spaces back in here, these white box spaces, that's where other educational type functions can be. Here is the community room that we just talked about. And as was talked about, this is the entrance plaza, and people will split and go this way and across here into the formal entrance. This is the historic lobby. This is what you would expect it to be. This is the connecting lobby between historic connecting, and then this is the south lobby here. So in this lobby space, that's where access here and additional entrances have been added to the south wall. A lot of restrooms back up and through here, and this is the studio theater. So there's two different kinds of functions. We'll show you some renderings of this in just a tiny bit. This studio theater here is flat floor, and it has provisions so that chairs on platforms can be moved out, or they can be pushed back and placed in number. The stage can be either in the center, to the right, to the left, or everything can be pushed back, and that can be used as banqueting, meet and greet, tumbling classes, whatever it needs to be, but this space here is very large. Okay, that is ground floor. Second floor. Is it coming up? There you go. Second floor, excuse me. Second floor is primarily this space here and the balcony area. And then we're looking down now into the historic lobby. This is the old ramp that came up from the ground level to this balcony area here. So you're looking down, back up in through here. This is the upper part of the lobby, upper part of the studio theater. And then these are all support functions for the performer. And then on the top level, the third level, there you go. The top level, the original roof of the historic lobby wasn't built for this. So we reconfigured it and restructured it so that this portion back up in through here is now the rooftop. This rooftop can be used for pre and post show performances, can be rented out independently. There's some indoor space back up in through here, coming in from the elevators and then getting to the rooftop. And then let me get to the video. Nope. Showing. And share. It's not sharing yet. Okay.
Still shows you over here.
This is not sure.
No, we do have, it's just a rendering video that kind of circles the outside of the building that we're planning on showing, just that shows all the rendering. Yeah, so we're here today, we'll be fine. So we can either jump to questions or we can break.
It's all right, let's give another minute, Steve.
IT's coming to help, so.
Can maybe move on to the questions part of the microphone.
Yeah, we can certainly, if there's some questions, while waiting, please do it.
All right, so the way we like to do is, before we offer feedback, we have questions, like this, questions clarify things that may not have been clear during your presentation. So the first question, and then we will offer you feedback, okay? All right, so.
Yeah, I have a couple. First is none of my business, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. My floor plan showed a black square right in the middle of the auditorium. What is that? It's not a column we dropped in the middle of the auditorium, is there? So your drawings? Well, the drawings that I have seen, what do I have? Yes. What's that? That's a column. You drop your column. Okay, well, if they're not business, I will press it. Make sure I didn't so. Theater, the stage is up here. Yeah.
So that's where there's a now.
It's existing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's correct. That's exactly so. Okay, the other question I have is, I see a couple of different iterations of architecture. We're half architects, we do care about the third dimension also. What is the, and I always have to ask, what is the status of the architectural design? Does this represent a real design or is it a placeholder?
This is a bit of a placeholder. The notion of for the culture is going to be executed. We're trying to determine now what the signage package is it going to be executed in brick? Or is it going to be something that's applied to the brick? But the notion of words for the culture is very important.
Right, all right. Okay. So we don't know how accurate this is.
Is your question about the signage itself?
No, I don't, sorry. My question is, what's the building gonna look like? Because that's part of the urban design.
The materials that you see there are accurate.
Okay, and the thorns,
For the culture.
no canopies, no other architectural features that have been put in.
No, what you see there is accurate.
Okay. And the next question, I think it's my last one, is, historically, was there not a canopy on the front of the existing retail?
No, there was always, there was a canopy that we believe was added in the seventies or eighties.
Mhm.
And that has since been removed because it was not original.
Okay,
And that in the performance with the state and the feds, when we were doing the historical review, they wanted to come back to the original phase, and that there was not
Okay.
the canopy.
okay. And what would you say were the, because it is a historic, a tax credit project and compatible design is a big part of what for new additions to this tax credit project. What was the inspiration of the designs that we see here? Is it, what were you pulling from?
It's a good question, and, there were actually 3 different colors of brick in the building, in the original building. It felt like all of the money went to Martin Luther King Boulevard. There was a little bit different brick on the east, and there was a radically different brick on the south and the west. So, and they were kind of a beige color, a reddish color, and something in between. So it was like, which one would we pick? And so we picked a color that was very complementary to the original. That was kind of what we were doing. Now, when you talk about what was the driving factor for the addition, we really wanted, and everything, anytime you're doing a historical building, you don't want to replicate exactly the historic. You want there to be a visual separation between old and new. And so we did that. And then we also, just in terms of color, they're slightly different, still in brick, but then we pulled the subservient face further back from the original face.
Okay.
That was how that drove the design.
Okay, good. And my last question, and I don't look for a long answer here. But the first time I asked this question of another project, I got a very surprised answer. So I have to ask everybody. In a project of this sort, such important community implications, can you briefly describe to me your community engagement activity to get to this point.
I know it.
Briefly, don't. I don't need a list of the people and stuff.
We can still provide that, as
I don't need any of that. I want, somebody, a previous project didn't have any. And so I feel we're obligated to make sure that you've been, and I know that's, you have to, I don't want to hear something about that.
We can certainly have to state for the record and indicate to you all that that's the reason why our organization exists, is to catalyze the business sites aspirations into achievable products. So the theater itself is an example of what I would call a pretty highly collaborative initiative within the neighborhood as an organization and all these wonderful partners you see there. And it's still a city and partners have been invested in the success of this neighborhood and other spaces. I'll talk about our organization for a second and how we approach our community engagement evaluation process, and then how that feeds into the larger question of how we cooperate and work with other partners in the development work that we're doing trying to do. So we hired a full-time community engagement person before I was one of the key early hires for the organization that has been independent since 2020. It's a great way to start anything. Sort of emerging from COVID, when the building had been acquired, and this organization created out of the Whiteman organization. It spun off this organization to be led by people who are from within the community, and so it's led by people who have a long history of either service to or embedded with and residents in the city. And I'm very proud to serve alongside them. I know most of the folks I work with because I went to Paul College for almost 9 years. And a lot of folks in that sort of college was inspired by this Project Zion and some of us expats are very inspired. The community engagement that we have done around from the time that there was no sign at all along the ground. It was simply just us asking the community what they want. We come to just write on the walls of the theater and preserve those documents, multiple community meetings, just a cadence of consistent community engagement. Anytime the design had to change because we had some sort of reality, not technical question. If we're going to do a good change the budget, we should the community really cared about it. So we took it back to them. So I joined just about 2 years ago, and the first year was just meeting with local PAC, meetings of could be 2 or 3 people, could be the whole church, meeting with the community in various settings and getting insight, meeting with our partners in the Forest District, and I'll start to speak to that just in a second. We're at Cornerstone and St. Phillips, where existing sort of pools of community folks are engaged in similar projects. We're both talking to their participants and people who are affected by the programming, their leadership, regular sort of quarterly meeting between our different organizations, what we call the Forest District Partners with Cornerstone and St. Phillips, as we think about how to collaboratively master plan this entire area in a way that does not sort of duplicate efforts and tries to make the most of the opportunities. And we have consistently driven the priorities we see in the community. I'll give 2 examples of how we made decisions that reflective of our commitment to putting their voices first in this process. We're part of what we call the First Fit Communities Network that has a 3-fold model for community transformation support, which are to create conduits for economic vitality and job growth, to create cradle-to-career pipelines through supporting educational transformation, and to create housing opportunities for people all across the country. So what you're seeing in the theater is one part of that, is economic vitality. But everybody loves the housing. It's a big part of everybody loves. But and when we came to our communities, and we also have the education part running almost from the beginning, that part's very successful with the Arts Academy. On the education front, most of the first communities have art schools. They've taken over with their own school in these different neighborhoods. There's 27 communities throughout the country that have this model. There's a pool of money, pool of resources connected to that approach. We took that idea to our community. They're like, don't do it. We have a school that's called the MLK Learning Center. Don't mess with the MLK. Don't do that. Don't get Boulevard. And which we took to heart and said partner with the community saying what access or equity is not present that we could contribute to we could unlock. And the fact that there were no arts academies that were creating a pipeline to Booker T and other opportunities was a real issue. So we go to the Arts Academy Partnership PIC instead of taking over from. So that was a community thing. The other piece I would say is with zoning. We
Well,
did not.
let me just take over that, since I'm zoning, and I have to go. So thank you for a very comprehensive answer.
I'm gonna keep going.
You know, you win, all right?
So with the zoning case, you always have a community outreach. So we partnered with them and they went to different HOA meetings and church meetings and stuff. But in addition, we sent letters to property owners who in the notice area can held a community meeting too. So we dotted our i's. We also, in addition.
That's all I think.
Yeah,
We don't know how many get there.
Yeah, that was a really good answer. Like one of my answers, far more than we really needed, but it was excellent.
I would just say that, and I won't pile on, but, you know, I have been in my, 48-year career as an architect, I've been to hundreds of groundbreaking, opening kinds of ceremonies and stuff. The event that was put on at the Forks was really an invitation to the community. And I don't remember how many people, but there were bands, there was music, there was food, and it was a community event already, just in the parking lot. And it was touching to me as an architect, because it wasn't perfunctory, you know, here's the shovel, we turn it over, you know, we're ready to go. This was, the community was absolutely involved in this.
I have a hard stop. Are there any zoning questions before I go?
Thank you.
Thank you all, and if you do, just text me, I'll be. Thank you.
And the zoning vote was unanimous. We had, the only person that, no people spoke in opposition to us at the actual, meeting, just said they love this lot. And if they want to succeed, and they're worried about housing, you know, so they're on the table right now.
Any other questions?
No, I don't care.
That's my choice.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, Vice Mayor, that question.
Yeah, good engagement. I'm a civil engineer, so my feedback, there is no questions actually with respect to that. So, I know everybody has landscape plan in front of them, so one question I have is on the north end along the sidewalk. Other than the historic lobby entrance, there are other three entrances shown, they are state, they are maintained.
When we were working with the historic group, both on the state and federal level, they wanted those entrances to be maintained. And so in fact, in the original design, there were, I think, additional entrances, but they weren't meaningful for the design of the time. I suspect that if indeed there are additional entrances that are required for the retail, they'll be added, but they'll be like the entrances that they can see there.
Okay. The question that I have is the parking that is shown on MLK, that is existing angle parking.
That's correct.
There is no new parking,
There is no,
there's no, you are not changing the curb lines or anything on that.
If you, so that is existing parking, it's been grandfathered in, it's really interesting, it's actually half of the parking is in the public right of way, half of it is on private property. It was a very unique situation, in zoning, we actually have no parking requirements that we have to meet for this building. As a theater, I think you would imagine that we're definitely providing it. We alluded to that we're doing parking under I-45, but given the experience that our patrons would be anticipating, we want to make sure that we're still providing parking because that has been grandfathered in. We didn't want to touch it. If we got rid of it, if we modified it, we lose it, and that is parking that is ADA acceptable, that is very close to the entrance of the theater. So,
Reason I tell you why I'm asking, because in the images, and the focus of the hard edge of the building is a little bit off the parking, but in this image, it is sort of wondering, you're not changing the building at all. So it was just not adding up, that's why I asked you.
okay.
If you look at the logo survey, the hard edge of the building is west of the angled parking corner, versus in the landscape it is east.
Correct. So, and that was the traffic law. So we did choose
to get rid of a couple of existing spots, so we made it a little bit smaller. We're closing some of that to expand the entry plaza. So that is the one where we can't expand any
The
further.
northwest of that.
Correct.
Yes, correct.
I also think that depending on the day, that parking lot's gonna be used differently. That on weekdays between shows, when there's the coffee shop there, that's an easy place to pull in, have coffee, eat outside. On performance evenings, the accessible spaces will stay, but that may be where Ubers come in and out because it's easy to pull in and get people in and get out. And so there's some flexibility in how that parking is used.
There's a curb cut shown on the south side where the green space is that a proposed curb cut? On the landscape plan, you know, right here.
That is a little bit outdated, that curb cut has been eliminated.
Okay.
Yeah, that is fine.
And also, is there any work proposed as part of this project along Harvard for connectivity or is this limited only what we see?
It's limited from MLK to Peabody for now. And in concept, there will be an extension, but that's not part of our permit.
And final question is, I'm assuming there's a fine grading already been done, because this is very well thought out, I can tell. Is the fill floor remaining the same all the way from the north edge to the south edge? And I'll tell you why I'm asking, because it's about 10-foot drop. Cross site, it's not very deep, and if you're extending, it's not good for that.
Yeah.
I see that 8 feet drop from the edge of the south lobby to the curb on the south. And I do see some stairs, but they don't seem enough, so I was, because on this plan, I don't see any ramps shown, or any retaining walls shown, or like that handicap space that is right there, so I was wondering about that.
Okay, so there's like 3 questions in there, so I will answer each of them. The historic lobby is, let's just say that that's 0. Then it steps down from there, and the original design did have steps. We had added a lift for accessibility. We tried and worked it so that we could, but there wasn't enough space to do that. So there are steps that go from the historic lobby to what we're calling the middle lobby, which is at the east end of the hall. And then from that elevation to the south lobby, those are the same. So if indeed that's correct. So if you come into the historic lobby, and you need to get into the theater, there is a lift in between there. If you come in on the south elevation, the access to the building is via ramp, and then you're at, yeah, that's correct. There's a ramp there, and then you get into the south lobby. Now, in terms of the number of steps, yes, they're correct. And I think they're not quite 10, but I think it was a little bit less than 8 feet. That's why you see the steps at Peabody. That's correct. That's correct. It was a bit of a challenge because the stage is what we were calling a 0, and we had 3 different elevations to plus to get to that point.
Okay, that's it, then I have some of the feedback that I'm sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the panel?
Yes, please. If I can clarify then, if this retaining wall and the lawn at the south, what's the elevation of that lawn from the sidewalk?
So the lawn, I think when we were doing that rendering, we were hoping to raise it to balance that out, but now it's actually just sloping ever so slightly with the natural grade. So the lawn and the sidewalk will be adjacent to each other.
Okay, well, okay, so this retaining wall.
Yeah, the retaining wall.
Okay, all right, thank you. And, what is the status of the project at the moment? What phase is it in?
We have already started, we've managed to get a breakout package, so we've already started construction to do early demolition.
Starting renovation.
Yes, we did the, it was to do a lot of the, early demolition inside the existing theater. We had to remove asbestos. And then we are hoping to receive our permit for the rest of the larger project, in the next month.
So if the ideal timeline would look like what for, substantial completion?
We are looking at December 2025.
Oh, okay, great, great.
Okay, just a quick follow-up to your question. So I assume that the project is fully funded right now?
We are working with, ownership is.
Oh, yes, I can speak to that. So we have the GMP in a couple of phases, and we're waiting to hear on a couple of sources that we are still on the firm up, but we have a path of vision.
And then, sorry, last question, the management structure, it's public-private, so will the city have any?
No, it's private, it's a nonprofit.
Okay, all right. Thank you for all clarifying on that. That's those are my questions.
Good, thanks. James? Yes.
I'll try to, I've got a lot of questions related to this. I know we've talked a lot about other things and, time to time. My questions are more contextual. So I trust colleagues here are going to focus on the detail of the theater itself, but as I look at this and think about it, what conversations have you had? I'm assuming you're seeing this as a pattern for what the future of this neighborhood can be. So looking beyond, not that kind of rabbit trail, but contextual, do you see this as, what's the vision of the neighborhood around this theater 15, 20 years out? Because I think the connectivity to the community, to the neighborhood is really, really important. I've got a lot of detailed questions about safety and connections and things like that, but not without getting into all of that here. What conversations have you had related to that? And what does the community really envision this being? How do they envision this connecting with the community? But that's in like new configuration. Now you've got a lot of potential, much better connection. At the, I know you had conversations with that 45 something linear in your future. But just tell us, and if you could sum up, what if you get envision, 20 years from now, what is this going to be to the community surrounding?
Okay, so I think to try and keep it as succinct as possible, I think there's a couple of big points that as the Forest Forward organization is working with the community, what is the big picture? A lot of it was activation. They have a very strong connection to the MLK Arts Academy. So the mission of the theater itself is not only to be a performance venue, professional performance venue, but they are also have a connection with the MLK Arts Academy, which has been very successful theater school to Booker T. It's one of the first of its kind. And so the theater itself, the components inside there have also been thoughtfully designed so that this is where children can learn professionalism. And so there's this overarching theme of cradle to college, and I think for career mentality. So that's a huge component why MLK is such a big component of this project, and the actual mission inside the building. The other component, as far as we're reaching out into the community, I-45 has definitely been a problem for us, as you can imagine. And so that's where we wanted to use that in a very thoughtful way with the parking under I-45, the way that we see it. Booker T has done similar here. We wanted to activate that space rather than having it be an area that is dark, could house people that we don't necessarily want there. Cornerstone is right on the other side. They can need more parking as well.
Yeah.
So it's a way that, even though we're not completing that project, we definitely spearheaded it. NCT COG and the city are managing that, and we're working very closely. But that's a way to then, SM Wright has opened up a lot of possibilities, and that's the way that we're opening up onto the other side to cross I-45, brightening up and create that connectivity there. And we've talked in detail with NCT COG and a lot of those conversations. That design is still a little forthcoming, but those connection points, those crosswalks, there's going to be a lot of really in-depth conversation about making sure that connection that's going to be very crucial to us. Does that answer some of those
That
questions?
answers the bigger question, and I think it's not probably for my comments, more thoughts related to how to do that.
The only thing that I'll add to that is that I think the notion is that there will always be something going on at the theater, on a daily basis, at the community, at the coffee shop, on the plazas, and then on performance evenings. The performance includes local, community, and professional, and it's designed to accommodate whoever is presented there. But I think this notion that there's always something churning there that's possible. I think that's what was driving this, what we collectively have designed.
Illuminations at night also help, but there's even been thought too, even when it's at night, what does the building look like? There's been a lot of thought put into the lights on the exterior of the building, to always make it, it's not gonna be dark, it'll stay lively, it'll create engagement, people want to see what's going on there, but it'll also make the Case street there very bright and activated, even in the middle of the night.
Thank you.
Yeah, quick
Sarah, yes.
I just wanted to be sure that I'm responding to like the latest and greatest. There's some discrepancies between some of the graphics. Maybe it depends on what element and we should just ask as we give comments. Okay. Like in general, it's not like the blow up plans are the latest.
I would say that is a little bit of an older edition, especially that one there, but really, I think most of it is still very true to what's going on there on that south side. That right there is one iteration back. I think that the current plans don't necessarily.
It'll show on
Yeah,
the,
there you go.
on the,
Right.
on the show here.
Okay.
And this is absolutely current.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
That would be one way to do that. That was my question.
Okay.
One last question,
Yes,
quick one,
please.
the lot just north that has the yellow parking lots, is that your property also?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes, the north lots, those are our property, and we're bringing some for the parking.
Okay.
Yeah. You were asking about the yellow parking lots? Careful not to touch the screen. Those are parking lots here and here that are at the north end, and the rest of the parking is underneath.
Yes, no, you please.
Questions, but would it possibly be able to send me to hit out enough minutes? So, I'm sorry.
All right.
But I think you might have questions, so we'll the questions and then.
No, it's okay. I'm sorry, you have your hand up. That was, you have questions?
No, I have comments.
You have comments? What if we watch the video first and then we can start with comments from you? I have only one question. The two, the video you mentioned, but I didn't catch it. The green areas just south of the theater. Do you control that property? Yes, it's all in your.
Those two.
Okay,
But
all right.
we're calling the south and southwest parcel?
Yes.
Yes, those are owned by.
You control. Okay, all right, very good. Thank you. So why don't we watch the video and then you have it set up? Then we can start with feedback after.
Control the shares.
What do I have to do?
Your video.
I
You see this?
What's your video?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not even the number behind after those references.
No, it's not. This is your video.
Oh, here, wait. Hang on, can I not control?
Can we touch it?
Screen. I know.
Looks like they got that.
It's not on that image at all.
Oh, no.
Sure.
No,
Oh.
You broke it.
No, here it goes.
Oh, yeah.
It was good.
All right.
You never know.
So this is swooping in, shows the relationship to downtown. And that's a quick image of parking underneath. That is the image of people coming across the parking, the front. These are some preliminary images of how the retail space, the original retail, can be used. A view from the northeast. Then we're going to slide into the historic lobby. And the original Art Deco motif has been replicated. You can see the arcing ramp to the second level, the balcony. Southeast corner, this is accurate here. This is the south lobby. Behind us is the entrance to the community theater. This is the theater proper. See the Art Deco detailing in the ceiling. This is the community theater. You see the large window to the south. And this is a space here. This is the roof garden. And I would be remiss in that, you know, from the roof garden, you see the Cotton Bowl to the east. You see downtown. And if Elizabeth Watley was here, she would say, it's always sunny in South Dallas.
All right, thank you. everyone. Okay. Now I think we can start our feedback section of the meeting, and let's start with Maria since she has to leave early.
I really appreciate it. This is just a pretty amazing project for the community, and I love what you guys are doing. I've been in the building, for an event with an organization called Charter 100 months ago. Fully support what you're doing. The only thing that I have to say about, the current design is the northwest corners, the southeast corners are clearly very important, from an urban standpoint. And then the connection Harvard is also really important. So, as you were talking about it, I really got excited. And when I see the drawing, I think that there's still some, work that can be done to make that connection better. There's a wall, there appears to be a wall right here where and I know it's a public street, but I think making that connection a lot more seamless so that most of the parking is gonna be on the north side anyway.
Correct.
And so a lot of the pedestrians are accessing the project here. There's a lot of connection happening with the schools down south, and then Harwood becomes a really important connection. I understand the challenges with the loading areas, and I'm confident that HKS and City outside can figure that out in the best way possible. But I think the connection here, the permeability here,
Just make it more permeable.
it should, in my opinion, if that's where all the people are gonna congregate, eventually, if you know that that's not the main entrance, you're gonna want to head south and then find your way to the main entry plaza. And so I think right now, the way this is designed, there's a wall, basically, you have to kind of go around that wall to connect that way.
I think at the time that you were doing the transition, the wall was due to green. There is a bit of a drop right there, so that was part of it.
So ideally, there's a way to solve that.
Yeah.
The other thing is the community, room, which I love being at the corner. I would love for it to have a more, prominent entrance from the corner and not down next to where the loading space is. I know you guys are pretty far into the construction documents already, but you know, it wants to be, in my opinion, very open from this plaza. So that's something that I would encourage you all to look at.
More prominent meeting announce itself in greater detail, just.
Yeah, I think it would be ideal. We have a slot here. I would love for that to be the entrance.
There's an elevation change, and that's why, quite frankly, the elevation is on the west face and it's a bit lower. And there's a ramp, that's where there's a wall there to accommodate those. But your point of making it bigger, feel bigger, that's a good point. We'll
Yeah, right now you have to kind of go around and behind
Yeah.
and find the entrance, which
Agreed.
I think that could be worked on. What else? So the street, the paint that you're showing seems really nice. It feels pedestrian, and I actually think that should connect. So it's not just connecting sidewalks, it's connecting the vocabulary of what that street is doing, so that it all feels like a plaza, that it, you know, every now and then it's used for loading and servicing, but it feels more like unintentional pedestrian.
Ironically, Maria, there's no back door to this.
Right.
All of them are visible, so they all had to be dressed up, and so the street is a part of that dress up. Yeah.
And then, the only other thing that I wanted to touch on, but I'm sure Jesse will dig into, is sustainability. So I'm not gonna give you any thoughts about that, but I'm sure she'll take care of that. Thank you so much. I appreciate, what you're doing for the community, and this is a fantastic project, and I'm all for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Okay, who would like to follow up? Since Maria mentioned Jesse, I go with, do you have comments, feedback, Jesse?
Yes, I do. First of all, thank you very much. It's an extraordinary project, and it's really lovely to hear it being described so thoughtfully, and so many aspects that I had put down as questions you've answered already with really a complete way. my particular interest in this project comes from, I mean, I've worked quite a lot with Elizabeth and Dr. Flowers, especially with some work that St. Philip's was doing down in this area by the empty Forest Theatre, or we even had gatherings and meetings in there, coming in through the big parking lot. So I'm really familiar with the site and the space, and I think it's really exciting. I can't wait. My main comment actually is something that you don't really have control over, but maybe because you're such an important landlord in this neighborhood, the way that you present it could impact the way it really is developed, and that's to do with the highway. You know, Colin Yarber is my student, and so this whole history of highways through neighborhoods is a really important thing. And I noticed that the drawings actually ignore the highway. It's not in any of the drawings except for this one overall site plan. And I think that given that it's there and it wanders through and it really impacts and overlooks the building and the whole kind of neighborhood plan, it is the center of this project, this highway. And somehow we have to find a way to celebrate it instead of hate it. And I love that you're putting parking under there. I know you don't have control over it, but I think that actually the little tiny drawings that show it kind of cleaned up and painted yellow aren't enough. It would be fantastic to rethink how that highway and the way it drives through, and even if you're just suggesting it to others. There are lots and lots of examples. I mean, you can hear, there are lots of examples in London. The South Bank Centre is right next to the tube that runs across the bridge, and there's arts restaurants and arts practice spaces built in under the highway, and there's parking under there too, and there's incredible lighting and projected movies. And I noticed that there seems to be a story going on of murals, which makes a lot of sense because of all the murals along MLK.
Right.
Maybe there are murals on the highway, maybe there are murals underneath the highway, maybe there's special lighting, maybe there's... I also think that the landscaping along that edge, even though you don't control it, it would be great if it were drawn like we're landscaping this on purpose. I don't know what the design is. My tendency is to say, don't put a row of trees along the edge because that kind of celebrates the highway. Put lots of rows that run, that nick back underneath it or something. And I know that there's going to be conversation about the crosswalks and...
Sometimes architecture happens in phases. And we had, when we met with Michael Morris with TxDOT, we talked about the possibility of, well, for instance, one of my projects years and years ago, we had an entrance into the zoo and underneath the Marcellus Bridge. And it was the same kind of, not quite the noise that this has, but something similar to that. And if you know that project, that's where we added on the top at the bridge where it says Dallas Zoo. We have broached that subject, the possibility of having sound walls and color and announcing a district and making that even more festive than it is. And I suspect that over the course of time, that if indeed, as Kelly says, if indeed this does get to the master plan is enacted, and there's a larger centric, residential centric neighborhood there, then the sound walls will have a better chance of funding and being able to happen. But we're on to you. We've thought the same thing, and we've already broached that subject. And I suspect that if I were betting, I think that's going to happen over the course of time, because I think once the residences are there, there'll be a greater need for it.
Excellent. So that's my kind of top thing. I'm similarly think that, you know, that I really would love to see a plan at neighborhood scale and really see how you're imagining St. Philip's, and especially the community centre part of St. Philip's rather than the school part, being connected through, so that it's not just the kids from. I mean, I know this school is more or less focused south. That's where all the pickup is. So the northern part of that, I like the way you're imagining its connection. It would be really nice to see how you imagine the connection with St. Philip's as well. And I know all of these are imaginary, but it's really good to make drawings of imaginary things, because then it helps other people share them.
Our concept of Harwood Street has always been kind of a mini Flora Street.
Yeah.
That on nice sunny days like today, the teachers and kids would just simply walk down the street.
Right, no, I can see that exactly from the MLK school, but some Phillips school kids also do shows and they use that theatre as well, I understand. Really interesting to see how you're imagining it cross under.
Very good.
Yeah, I think as thank you for both those points. I think that really gets into some of the future planning, so I'll definitely put those down as considerations as we get to those expansions.
And a similar thing about the land to the north with the yellow parking lots, it's the one piece that I feel doesn't have a lovely kind of vision to it, and it may be because you really don't want to have surface parking and you kind of had no choice. But given the really lovely way you've dealt with the closed street and the surface park, what was surface parking along Harwood, it would be nice to have a vision for that triangle lot that has surface parking on the north, so that it feels like it's, because it is what you see as you come up there.
Clear plan down on that lot across the street. There's a liquor store that we acquired that sadly we put out 24/7, so it's very accessible, but unfortunately we had to shut it down. And that would ideally be our administrative offices in the near future. And long term, we would like to see some sort of commercial development or something there that would activate that in a more robust way without undermining the service of the theater, but we agree there should be a robust future for that.
The second question actually is to do with, not question, idea is to do with Harwood. I really love the way you imagine it as a festival space. It reminds me of the way that the roads and the parking at the Latino Cultural Center are sometimes used. And one of the things I thought, just as quite a heavy user of the LCC, is that they actually, when there's no event there, the spaces are quite enlivened by the fact that the actors who are there for practice are parking right there in the middle of everything. And I wondered if it might be worth rethinking the statement that there's no parking on that Harwood space. It may be that when there isn't a festival, it would be quite all right for the actors who are there practicing till 11 to park there on the Harwood piece of street.
We did go through those discussions with the city to see if initially people did want to be able to put parking there. We encountered quite a bit of difficulty in being able to get that approved because it is still it is off of the thoroughfare plan at this point. We did manage to get that, but we can't officially add parking onto that street because it's dead end. We can't put in parallel parking. We can't have anything allowed at this point in time, but as things go on as that area, we may be able to come back and revisit that, but that is something we have the same idea.
You've already thought about everything.
Maybe a future iteration, we can revisit that in the city as things grow.
Then, of course, I've got to jump into the two really obvious sustainability issues. One of them is the amount of impermeable paving, which I'm imagining somebody else is going to bring up as well, or the amount of paving, and wouldn't it be nice if some of it were permeable? I mean, that's partly the big plaza steps up to the south entrance, which I can just imagine all those Saturday food markets being there. I love the design, but wouldn't it be nice if a lot of that paving were permeable? And similarly, if there's any of the Harwood Street, I know it's difficult when there's lots of stuff underneath and it's already a street, but if any of that could be permeable. It's more expensive, I know, but it would be really great to not have quite as much water flowing off. And then the other kind of huge elephant in the room is that huge glass wall facing south. I can see that there are two of them, one at the south entrance and one in the Black Box Theatre, and neither of them have any shading. South facing glass wall.
I say south, it's actually southeast. So we're not going to be taking quite the beating from the west sun. We will. The notion in the main lobby, fortunately, is that primarily the shows are after dark. The images that we show, we're using kind of a shading across the windows. The black box itself, yes, there's kind of an importance when it is used as a banquet facility. That window will be open. When it's used as performance, those windows will have shades across the face of it so that everything is focused on the inside. We looked at it. We did have double glass that, originally, and I think, that's we super insulated the vaults, all of the other vaults that we could. And that's how we address that.
I mean, I think that we should have a city code that doesn't allow huge glass windows facing south, and I think that there are solutions. I think there could be external shades. I think there could be external planting. I think there could be, I actually think there's no excuse now in Texas with the cost of global warming to be using the energy that's required to cool a space with south-facing glass. But that, I'm expected to make those comments. That's my and so I always push back against it at every session.
And like I said, fortunately, the plan is actually southeast, not east, but it's still your point or we'll take.
On the light until 2 p.m., which is really yeah.
All right. Yeah. That's it, Jess. Thank you. Sarah, would you like to follow up?
Yes. I wanted to start kind of piggybacking on the highway discussion. I think there might be an opportunity in this green triangle to really focus on more reforestation. And what I'm thinking here is Texas Trees has been doing a lot of great research in the medical district about contamination from highways and like highly trafficked roads. And just if we really want to pull people out, knowing that, folks in South Dallas have higher rates of asthma, I think it's actually like an environmental justice kind of opportunity to really reforest that edge and utilize trees as kind of a buffer from the highway. And I hope that in the TxDOT coordination, looking at the renderings of what that crossing is going to be. I know it's early, but like as much as you can push TxDOT, like we need lighting, we need paint, we need celebrate that crossing if we really want to use that parking lot as like a main circulation. I think that the loop is a good precedent that just got finished under 35. Trail, really lit up, community murals, makes it like a less scary space to utilize at night, especially since that's when a lot of these performances are going to happen. So I'd say any way that we can help as well to really push TxDOT to making that investment really a community investment is going to happen.
I think it's a matter of time that when TxDOT is done with this triangular and one on the north side of MLK, they have indicated they would no longer need it. That then it goes to the city, and then from the city, that's when we can have these kinds of conversations.
Great. I'm glad that's on your radar. I think the other thing about trees, like looking at the really lovely animation fly through, it just seems like there's a lot less trees on the latest design. Like instead of having this really lovely kind of double alley on both sides of this plaza, it's down to one tree on each side. Like bring those back. Or this lawn, I really appreciate having like a flexible event space, but maybe there's room for a couple of really big kind of specimen trees just to make the space more utilizable too, I think, in hotter months so that they can take advantage of the shade out in that big open space. I know that there's a lot of utilities going on, so I can appreciate that difficulty, but I'd say, trees are one of the best investments that we can make in public health, so it's on the radar.
And we're actually, I think you can see in the plan, there's a couple of existing trees that are being kept, they're big.
There's 3 legacy trees that are being
Yes,
kept,
that's
yes.
Yeah, I did work to kind of keep those in our own, but I think those are great comments.
Yeah. The other thing that's kind of a global comment is I noticed that there's 4 bike racks at this north, well, I get a little turned around, but the entry kind of plaza corner. Are there any other bike racks planned? Okay.
They're actually on every facade of the building.
Okay, excellent.
And I think actually we tucked it closer to the building a little bit in that corner.
Okay, great. All right, and then just a couple comments about form. I think this closely relates to what Maria was saying earlier.
I love this phrase that you said, like, think Flora Street. And I can't not think of Flora Street when I'm looking at the termination of Harwood here. And I do think more social permeability, more celebration, like it is a rare and interesting, urban form thing when a city street terminates on your property. So like, how could that become more of a true plaza rather than, Harwood happening on this side of the seawall and an arrival plaza on the other side? Like if the grading is allowing for that, I think that would be an amazing kind of moment. And
I think that actually just putting in steps there would achieve that.
yeah, even steps would be very helpful. Yeah.
Because they have the accessible sort of pathway on the sidewalk itself. So you could easily do steps there instead.
Yeah, that could work. And something that kind of, punctuates it, celebrates it, makes it sort of an energetic draw that connects those two elements, I think could be really engaging. This is a very small detail, but this kind of, I don't know, it was rendered as just like grasses, ornamental grasses on this little area. Just thinking about the opportunity for, if you can't plant a tree there, I imagine there's utilities.
I think actually we do have a tree in there.
Oh, okay, great, all right.
You should like post that render, post the walkthrough.
Okay, great. I mean, I'd love to see, could that even be a really high visibility opportunity to show off like green infrastructure? Could that be some kind of rain garden or a bioswale that could, tell at least a story of sustainability in this like big new investment in the community? Could be an interesting opportunity.
I like it.
Yeah, and I think Jesse covered the comment on permeability and paving wherever we can get that in the areas for urban revitalization and all of that. I think there are some cost-effective solutions, but yeah, I recognize it probably the answer. The more that we can do that, the better. But overall, just really, really thrilled to see this project. It's a great plan. It's a kind of foods. Really excited.
Yeah, I agree. I like a lot of what Jesse and Sarah both said. And again, I'll zoom out. I go back to this original plan view that you've got first paper here. I'm a firm believer that the success of this, as your gathering place, sort of the center of activity, will be safe connections. And 45 is a challenge. SM Wright, I think that is a tremendous opportunity there. I think MLK is also a wonderful opportunity. Further, thinking about the work on Fair Park, and Convention Center, this is sort of in that path. So I think you're going to get a lot of activity, if you think about not only the neighborhood user, but people that may come into the new convention center that want to get to the theater. So you're going to you got to blend both of those.
We're actually looking at this project. So
Yeah. People always tease me,
Yeah.
get below 100 scale, I start to get nervous. So not take it back too far, but yeah, I really believe that that's going to be the success of this. And maybe as you were talking, I was thinking, put yourself in shoes of a mom. What is going to make that mom feel safe allowing their child to walk through this theater? And when I look at this, we can lean on our friend Don at the end of the table. I see a lot of free rights, see some cul-de-sacs. A lot of things like that make me nervous because dead-end streets typically don't end up with good things happening. If there's any way with SM Wright to reconnect as many of those streets as possible. I know that a lot of it may be outside your purview, but work with the stakeholders to say, that it's the success and we can help there. Sarah just offered, we certainly will help the advocates for that because I think connectivity, greater connectivity to neighborhoods, these streets that have been cut off or even off the page as a result of the original construction of the Escamilla Freeway could be reconnected into the boulevard that provide just better connectivity, more eyes on the street, more ways to get there to and from. Safety, I think lighting under the freeway, as we get into the details of the parking.
Right.
I work really close to Booker T and I see that. I mean, it's still dark. under there. You know, I always think, well, if I had a student in Booker T, would I really feel comfortable with them parking under there because it's dark? And maybe painting under the structure, you know, white paint, coat of paint could go a long way and brightening that up under the freeway and make it less of a dark, ominous place. So I think we should work with Mike and
More
Morris.
is to add as much lighting as possible underneath there.
Yeah, I
And
think
I
so.
think over the course of time, quite frankly, when I said things happen in phases, I think those big blank walls will become artwork. I just think that
Right.
you know, you see the history of artwork on the face of the theater, just on a rotating basis on plywood.
Yeah.
I think those big shards of concrete need to be painted brightly.
Yeah, somehow, and I think if you think about it in layering, and I know you are, you know, the street grid, the connectivity is super important as that first layer, your projects within that grid, and a lot of it's been disrupted with the restriction of freeways over the last 60, 70 years. But in restoring that to the degree possible, but then layering in what's the infrastructure that's not going away, at least not in the immediate future, and then trying to make that less of a factor. It's an industry, but it's one that every city almost across the U.S. is going through right now. I'll just keep going through my list very quickly. Yes, I mentioned the free rides. You know, as I look at this, I feel like the east facade. Not to get into the architecture, but I feel like the east facade, you know, I want that SM right edge to really feel more urban. And we've talked a lot about really the other three sides, but that SM right east facade, you know, when you talk coffee shops, is there not an opportunity to make that feel a little more urban? I do get a little concerned about too much green space. We got to find that balance that maintenance keep us at.
Just an answer to that, our property line on the east is cheek up against, I mean, we don't have.
So that's city.
Yeah, it really is. And quite frankly, we've discovered that there's about this much of the theater that is across the property line at the southeast corner.
Oh, wow.
And so, I mean, we're cheeked up against it. There is a notion of activation of that west wall. And this has to do with donor money that is potential of how that can be activated with a video provision signing. That's correct.
Yeah.
You know, so that, but we're in a cheeky kind of thing that it, you know, with the sign provisions, you know, it can't be advertising, show coming soon is advertised. So there's, so there's something in between that wants to activate the theater, Forest Theater, you know, with different images, but.
Yeah, that's sort of, it's gonna be, if you think about what was there and what's there now, it's completely, the whole paradigm has shifted.
Right.
You've got now a strong neighborhood connection again, where you did have for so long a big retaining wall, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, making that connection visually, physically, I think better. It's just something that I thought when I
Understood.
looked at this.
We are taking all of the paint on the brick wall. We've already tested that and proven that works, so that it's going to humanize that space instead of a big shard of white paint that's going to be going back to brick again, you know, with the trees in front. So
that's good.
It's an initial step.
And your comment leads me to my last comment, which is the maintenance of the key. But, you know, old Harwood Street, I guess just, you know, keep doing the hard work of working through the maintenance agreements, whatever you've got to do so that doesn't feel like it's in the street right away. It's sort of left to happen stands. I know that you're working through that. That really covers the higher points.
Thank you. Good comments.
Appreciate you. Thank you, James.
James actually left out at about the very point, because I want to talk about Harwood Street. I won't belabor the under highway parking. I feel like that's been covered well. But I also want to thank you all for the work that you're doing on this. And I understand that it's both I won't say a curse, a blessing and a challenge, because I would not be paid $1 million to do this position because you have so many competing priorities trying to get through this. So thank you all for this work. I think it is so significant. I think I'm going to focus my comments on the Harwood pedestrian vision that you have. And I've heard you say over and over that it has that you're connoting Flora Street and that condition. As a very recently ex-DMA employee, I'm well familiar with that condition. And what I can't quite wrap my head around is what aspect of that you're evoking, because you're actually, it's interesting that this is Harwood Street because it's acting like Harwood Street in this situation, but you don't have the Flora Street.
Right.
Because the Flora Street is the DMA is the terminus to Flora Street.
Right.
And so without that condition, this actually does feel a lot to me like back of house space that you're really, really trying to enhance, but you can't quite make that leap because the structure of the condition makes it impossible. And I'm wondering if you don't just at this point embrace that. I don't know if there's a way to cut off Harwood, maybe just terminate it a little bit before this plaza starts. But if this doesn't just become what it is and keep it sort of as a services, maybe loading and unloading passengers, something like that, not try to focus this part of it so much as being the public open space, but redesign it in a way that allows for, I don't know, some kind of terminus, like an achieve situation, so that you're not trying to dress up what is an unchangeable condition. So then you start to carve away at this triangular space that's so generous right now. And I also think that, giving back some trees, but is there a way that you can activate this situation here? Because the other thing that I'm feeling with the plan is that again, you have so many different competing interests and priorities to have to work with, but in doing so, you've sort of de-emphasized every single entry by making every corner an entry. There is no predominant entry now, and so I don't really know where to go. And so I'm wondering, rather than trying to make an entry here, make an entry here, here, and here, you really focus it and narrow it down to maybe 2 singular points of entry. I don't know which ones they are at this point. By designing these spaces in a way that really celebrate those entries, instead of trying to have every point of access be everything to everybody, really pull it back a little bit.
Yeah.
And provide a little bit more visibility at maybe the corners. So everybody's going to want to go to this historic entry because that's where the marquee and the tower are.
Okay.
But is there a way to then, I'm sorry, I'm getting lost in where we are here. Anyway, I think you take my point.
Like this in speaking with TechStop, looking at this first drawing here, is that they wanted us to not have, because we asked if indeed we could use where you're showing, the curve coming into the building.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, that's fast. That's, the speed of the car is such that you don't want in and out. No. And then you said, well, what if, no, we don't. So but the part that you're talking about, that if indeed we in sometime in the future have access to that triangular spit of property there, then I think there's other things that can easily happen.
So this is not a part of your,
It's not,
you have no control.
TechStop has indicated, because we asked, and they said, when they're done using it as a laydown space, then it goes from TechStop to the city, and then when it's the city's property, then we would have an opportunity to purchase. So it's got to go through those steps.
Because this is such a crucial wedge to this
You're
project.
preaching to the converted.
And the part that needs the most mitigation, I think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you had room there, if you studied that as a drop off.
I know, because it feels like there's this disconnect that it's, again, rather than trying to fight it and make it something that it will never be, how can you just shift it and activate a different part of it? And so I don't know what resources the city has to, or we do, what we do.
The reality is that the crossing from the due west that's really mandated, that, the parallel to MLK. And then there's a crossing that is on this side of that street. So those crossings are I think they're in stone. So the use of that triangular, there's, in our head and what we previously designed, there's at least 3 or 4 things that we would love to do once we have access to it, but right now it's simply not a part of what our work is. And you asked, yeah, I mean, landscape is going crazy. Yeah, exactly. But the notion of Flora Street is, to me, I know they're different, but I think the thing that I glom onto is what happens at the pedestrian level at Flora Street. You know, the paving level, the amount of trees, the amount of benches, that just the street is a place to hang out in, because there's so much other stuff going on. And that if indeed, you know, the master plan gets affected, and I think it will, then what happens in terms of there's another coffee shop, a little restaurant, you know, at the base of those things. So that there's, not only is there always something going on at a theater, but now you've got this finger all the way to MLK going south. That is just kind of its own subzone, is what our visioning has always been.
Well, then in that case, that's too bad. Is there a way then that you can add a monument sign in this? Again, I think just prioritizing 2 entries instead of all 4 would go a long way to helping with some of these things that you can't change.
The mechanics of that right there is we had to satisfy panel trucks coming and going, semi trucks coming and going.
Right, exactly.
Buses that are coming and going, and trash that's coming and going.
Yes, and that's what it feels like.
And then, my only response is, and I maybe I should have brought it, in the Echo Theater that we did at Salt Lake, the dock doors themselves are pieces of art, that those are all been painted, and that's lively, because when all of those things come and go during the week, and this is now on performance evenings, people are going to be coming past that, and like I said, we don't have an opportunity of a back door on this theater, so that has to be dressed up at the face of the building.
Okay.
Maybe think of each phase of how that could work, and it could be a plaza first, but then it could serve as a food truck parking, or I don't know, something that could be activated if fixed up.
Yeah, and that is actually, part of my last comment is rather than waiting for things to happen, how can you build in or design in things that could in the future make that easier to happen, so that rather than saying we have no control over it now, there's nothing we can do, and it's like, wait.
Yeah.
Are there small design adjustments that can be made currently that might facilitate that in the future?
Agreed. What was in our purview is making the sidewalks as wide as possible. We've done that. And quite frankly, since there's not going to be any vehicles there, people are just going to walk on that street. They cross in both directions. They're going to walk on the street and come around and back. That's what we can do. The other thing is, and Jessica mentioned it, we've got more trees than we're required to have. Right? So we try to make that, try to dress it up as much as possible. That's what we can do at this point.
Well, again, I don't envy you all, but I appreciate everything you're trying to do, so, well, thank you.
Thank you.
What do you like to talk about? Well, quite a bit. You're happy to leave like 5 minutes.
It's very forward, I'm civil engineer, in fact, okay? I think one thing I know what all of you have cities, they shouldn't be a very national price and a lot of these things, so it's not a lot of flexibility, but it's flat work, outside of it, you can probably change. That anchor parking, that is on the north side of the building, mess around with it a little bit. It is 13 spaces at the moment. Given the nature of the building, there's going to be a lot of people, like a show is starting, there's a lot of people coming, show is ending, there's a lot of people leaving. Yes, they're going to have parking, but also there'll be a lot of people getting dropped off, Uber pickups. What I recommend is when you look at, instead of that anchor parking, convert that into a parallel. Do not take that space that you have for the outside seating for the cafe, but consider a dedicated space for a pick up and drop off. Everybody that I know and younger than me, just Uber everywhere, right? And because this is such a event based, like people are coming, 100 people coming and going, kind of leave, you really want to create that, otherwise you are just asking for trouble. And Reason I'm saying that is this, you have 13 spaces, you convert that to parallel, it gives you a lot of flexibility, you're only losing 6 spaces. So it's not like you are losing a whole bunch, but you will gain a much higher value function out of it. That's what I think. Second thing, I know you mentioned that short said, hey, no, but on that existing service road, there is extremely wide, at least 2 curb cuts that you can see right there. Right?
Those are existing.
Existing.
Yes.
I know that's what I said, no, but I think if they're using the space, that's one thing. Once they're done using, it is worthwhile asking because it is not technically a true frontage road. We convert that and try to get some, maybe 6 or 8 parallel parking spaces right there. It won't cost a whole lot, but you get a whole bunch. I'm not saying closest to the intersection, because there are minimum distance requirements that they won't allow. But right around in this area, I see that they may allow 4 to 6. And if that happens, once you have control of this, maybe this will become the drop off down.
I like that.
You know. Third thing, this is a design detail question. You have very good engineers working on the job, but please consider that that 4 handicap spaces that you have on the southwest part of the building, I see very difficult to make it work. Because you have, like you mentioned, about 6 to 8 feet of drop across the green space. And I see in their plan they have space reserved for future detention ponds. So if you're gonna be trying to do that, you're gonna invariably have to either add some retaining walls or flatten it out, but you can't go steep or right.
Right. We are actually flat across closest to the building. We're from where those 4 are, close to the building, it's flat. Then we get then we've got the ramp that comes into the south lobby. So that's,
I just wanted to mention this quick area.
Yeah.
Second, to kind of piggyback on the PSF, I see this as the service center of the building. This is the service center of the building. You do need a service center. So I think it is better to maybe de-emphasize this form a little bit, but I like the other 3. I think they are fantastic. I know you said that the traffic movements have been considered and it's all good. I see that functioning as like school buses are coming in, and there can be more than one. I just see that very, very tight right now. I really don't understand how, at the moment you said it's been all checked out, I don't see how it turns out that happen based on there. I don't see it on the list.
I can
So my
send you
suggestion is only, I don't need it, just please verify. The service vehicle that we have, that there is room for turnaround in this area.
There is.
And then now trash pickup is gonna happen in load, and that's it.
Very
So
good.
it's very well thought out, and it's very exciting. It'd be awesome, especially the rooftop.
Yeah.
That is, I think that's gonna be the most happening space, because you can see, like I said, to the east and then downtown on days like that will be a very, very much of an active zone.
Sorry, I'm sorry, can I get back to one quick question? Where will that view be blocked if housing?
No, they're on opposite sides of the building.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, no, that's at the northeast corner.
Great.
So you see in the housing is at the south side.
Okay.
Like on this, I'm assuming this is that a dark bus stop, that's why you took the paving out to the curb?
I'm sorry.
Like from this, see, going east, straight right, west and right, is there a dark bus stop?
No, the bus stop is on the front next to the main marquee area.
I was just wondering why, I thought that's why you did that.
No, this is an existing curb that there already was. We wanted to be able, if you needed to be able to, for a special occasion, typically that'll be blocked off. But that way, if you need, there's an event, a special person, you
So
have.
you're not put, curb, a whole curb over there?
There'll be a rolling curve, and the notion of having, the potential of having a truck, if somebody important comes in, they can come and park there, and be in the south entrance, and let that, as an option. We use that.
Did you have some additional community engagement questions?
No, by the time I'm speaking, maybe we're shut head, but no, I'm good right here. So first of all, I'm gonna pile on what everybody else says about thanks for this project, it's an amazing project. I'm deeply involved down the street at Fair Park. I'm well aware of thank you for this neighborhood and the inputs that it needs, and that's why I asked about the community engagement, so do that too. Boy, that was a good answer. But reviewing a second, you know, let's, I think it's a great plan. I think it's a great idea and all the things we've talked about so far, I think are fantastic. And so congratulations on your success. That's a good point. I have a couple of things though. We're calling that this building, the building you're starting with, what started this is the Forest Theater. And that is a community landmark in every sense of the word. Architecturally, culturally, historically, that is an extraordinarily important anchor building for this community, and that's why so much effort has been put into keeping it and bringing it back. Also, recall James talked earlier about not only are we worried about the past, but we worry about the future here. You are setting a standard. You are setting an example, not a standard, but an example for what's to come. I think everybody understands there's a great deal to come, not around the stable here, but all kinds of folks, all kinds of activity are coming to this neighborhood. We need to do things that show them not what we have in South Dallas, but what we want in South Dallas. And so with that, and then the third thing I come in, and I've said this in other things before, somehow people are getting the impression that we as an urban design body are primarily interested in landscaping and road sections and things like that. And we do care about those things. But it's also about the third dimension and the architecture. The things we put back there can contribute to all of those concepts as much as the landscaping. Now I'm going to throw it over here to the Peabody elevation I will use for an example here. First of all, little boxes along the bottom. Do we know what those are? Okay, well that's the wrong answer. The point is this: there are lots of opportunities. This is kind of why I asked earlier about this issue. There are tremendous opportunities on that building to contribute much more to the architectural, the design, the urban design vitality of that neighborhood than, that we haven't taken advantage of yet. We can go back to the idea of shading of windows. You can shade things, people and windows architecturally. It doesn't have to just be a tree. We talk about that, but it doesn't be a tree. It could be a canopy or an architectural feature. It has a carbon footprint early, but you don't have to water it. So there is a trade-off there. There are things you can do to improve those elements with the architecture. There's wall spaces. There's just a lot of things that could be done here. You've got to go to the other side. Remember that this is a very small picture. Look at the energy and the creativity and the vitality that's in this building. Now you don't want to compete with that, but you're certainly welcome to draw from that, to get ideas and let that and inspiration inspire you to do things here that are compatible with that and help you contribute that sort of energy all the way around the building. Now, I don't want to be that. You know what? Little lights on the side of a blank wall scream office warehouse. This looks. I'm sorry. That looks like an airport. And we need more in South Dallas than that. I think there's just it's clear that the second dimension, the flat dimension, we put a lot of effort into. And maybe put a lot of effort into this, but I think it doesn't respond to the context. This is context-sensitive design. This is not what we have in the southern sector right now, and I don't know that it represents what we want in the southern sector. So my suggestion, and I'll be short here, but my suggestion is that wherever you are out there, to pay more homage to the really interesting historic building that you're anchored to, and try to take some of that interest and energy all the way around it architecturally, because I think the neighborhood could use good examples of how you take the early 20th century idea and adapt them to the 21st century. That's kind of
Thank you.
Any other comments, any questions? One more? All right. You're up. Well, first of all, we had a full panel today, which doesn't happen often. So you heard from some of the brightest people around. And because of that, I can't add what you already heard. I just want to reiterate that in principle, we support the RFP, and we support the idea of bringing the theater, part of the theater back to life. That's of course a good thing. South Dallas needs it, and we applaud you for doing that. But I do have a couple of comments. First one, Ray, it's too late to bring this project for review. They are demolishing, about to start real construction. They have construction documents ready. So there isn't much that we can do at this point. Typically, we have review projects that are in earlier phases where input is still feasible. At this point, and we can make comments, we can offer suggestions, but realistically, how much can change? So, reiterating the need for bringing projects in their early stages, not when construction has already started. It's not on them, it's on us. Second, you heard a lot, all my peers here, really all of them, make comments not only about offer comments to you, not only about the building, but also about the content, the spaces around you. And I keep thinking, should we have had a master plan before starting design on the building? I know that your property is limited to one block, we understand, but given the nature of the impact, the cultural, social, economical impact of something like this, the responsibility of something like this, shouldn't we have crafted a master plan, at least a vision plan, if not a master plan, a vision plan for, at least two blocks around it? That vision plan would have in turn informed decisions that we made on the building. Things that we are discussing now. Is this the right spot for the right spot for the loading dock? Is this the right spot for another entrance? Is this the right spot for the lawn? All good things. Community room, who can argue with that? We all want community rooms. Who can argue with a lawn where community events can happen? Everybody wants it. The question is, are they in the right spot given the bigger vision for the place? And that's what I question. The idea of having Harwood Street as the mini Flora version, that's beautiful. Again, who would question? Flora Street is still successful now. But remember, for many, many years, Flora Street lingered. There wasn't much going on there. There was DMA and not much else. For a lot of years, remember. It only became alive when buildings were built and faced Flora Street. The paving, the lights, the trees, they are nice to look at, but they're not going to hang out there. You only hang out, you only use Flora Street to go from place to place, and then the street becomes the conduit. And it's very well designed to be that conduit. So, point is, when I asked you guys, did you control these two parcels? And you said, yes, great. What is the plan? What is the vision plan for this? How do we connect? You brought up MLK Academy, St. Philip, how do we weave all those components? I know they don't belong to you, but they will benefit from what you do and vice versa. So that's what we'd like to have seen. So that's what I can offer back to you. Maybe a bit later. Maybe not, because we still have time to develop. So, in short, in summary, we applaud you for doing this. We support, of course, what you're doing. It's almost an impossible task. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 sides, have design theaters as well. So I know how hard it is when you have 4 sides exposed and you still need a loading dock. I know it's a challenge. It's almost impossible. So, but that's what the fun stuff. It's the fun stuff. That's what the fun stuff. So, I think that's what I can offer. Anything else from the panel that we can offer to the team?
I thought it might be worth just sneakily adding in a conversation that we've been whispering about over here,
Yes,
which is
please.
the lovely roof terrace is probably going to end up with stand-up umbrellas because it's going to be hot up there, and it would actually be really nice if it wasn't stand-up umbrellas. If there were able to be something signed into it.
We have faced any provisions for additions later, they're quite expensive at the moment, so they didn't quite make the budget, but structurally, we are prepared to have, we also are contending with the historic, we can't do too much early on.
You can't do too much at the edge, is what you're gonna have to do.
Yes, so we're also limited on being able to build up. They changed that.
But that's what the fun is.
Yes, so we are.
All right. So, good luck with the construction. If you didn't have construction documents already, if you were in the early phase of the project, we would have asked you to come back to the master plan. But again, you are past that phase. And I think we have to have a faith in the project, in you now, and support it as it moves forward. And if at all possible, to incorporate feedback, comments that you heard today, I think it would make it for theater even better.
I think the comment of permeable paving, yes, absolutely. I think we can do that. I've taken a number of notes that I think we'll take into feedback. I'm a little bit guarded as to the master plan because I think, quite frankly, a lot of what has been espoused is you'd be appreciative of, which is not there yet. There was an initial commissioning plan, and we're building upon that now. And so, honestly, I do think that they should be appreciative of what's coming. I think I'll go back to my initial statement that what's going to happen at Forest sets the stage for multiple blocks in all directions.
So you have a vision plan. We'd like to have seen it.
Yeah.
It should have been part of this conversation because we would have reacted to that. It would have helped us to understand what else is coming, how else is coming, and how that vision plan inform what we have today. But just one extra.
I have one, just
James,
thought too that I have to mention, if you have a good idea, but I would encourage, if it involves being textile like Morris, any of the others, if it's a good idea, draw it up, throw it out there, because as I've been told by some of them, good ideas get funded. I mean, if you find a way to do it, if it's in that space, even though they've said, hey, it's a no touch, I mean, eventually something's going to happen there. And this is activated, whether it's what Basil was saying, or, you look at one other function, but programming those spaces so that they aren't just leftovers that, I think draw it. Yeah, sketch it up, give it a try.
I added that, and I'll go back what Norm said a moment ago. This board and legislature, of course not, but what we can do is we can make recommendations that Ray Dern will take planning department, who may take it up to council, and in the past things have changed, things that typically wouldn't have happened, but without a recommendation, without support. things that go beyond the street section and the type of paving and how many trees. Because that, well, you know, but beyond that, reassigning property or parcel of land or facilitating the use of these or that or creating an exception for, because it's a good reason, compelling reason. Things like that happen in the past. And Gray and his team can facilitate that with our support. So, James, you're right. If there's a good idea, try it out, share with us, and if we agree with you, hey, it might very well happen, even though it's not in the books, even though tax dog tells you today, well, can't do that. Well, there are ways, there are other ways. All right? Okay, great. I'm sorry. 2 hours in notes. Right, can you summarize in a minute or so?
Yeah, I think so. Don and I have
Come
notes.
on.
I'm the rookie now. I'm focusing on the comments, correct?
Yes.
Questions, okay.
Summary of it.
Summary of the comments, which is, I wrote a lot, so very much scribbled. Very much through that, yeah. I'm gonna start with what Maria was saying, that she loves the initiation of it, and she saw that there was how important it was, when Maria mentioned about the connection between Harwood, it's very important, and that, still try to make it work harder to make it better. Some things also was to solve the wall issues that she had saw was the concern. She also mentioned on the entrance itself, make it feel like a bigger, so that the prominent, so it's very prominent. They already have a very prominent entrance, but anything you do to make it feel even more so. And then someone else also mentioned that that the entrance, the monumental entrance, will always be kind of the preferred entrance, no matter what I could do. Jesse mentioned it's an extraordinary project, but she brought up a really interesting point, to recognize the highway and to find a way to celebrate it. And I think what you're saying, Jesse, too, is in the sense that it's a very utilitarian infrastructure to begin with, and there's sort of a utilitarian response with the parking. And there's other things to do, such as arts, and feel like it's a public space, murals and lighting. All those things are very important. She decided to project London, but don't just do a row of trees between the highway and the center. Find ways to celebrate the highway. And I think what she's getting at is that the highway itself, which was a big divider for South Dallas community, instead of it just being a nuisance, find a way to try to celebrate it. It's a highway. So that's an interesting comment too. You mentioned, Mike, about south walls and things like that. Sound walls being considered. Jesse also said that I'd like to see how the connection works with St. Philip's and Cornerstone, and trying to think of the highway less of a barrier, more of an opportunity. Jesse also mentioned the site, the north of the site of MLK should have a stronger vision, that triangle space. Again, Chris had mentioned about the liquor store was acquired, and that, and you'd mentioned, Mike, that maybe in phases of time, with the space across the north side of MLK might have a completely different vision, but for now, it's just a parking. Consider that.
Yes, to be disrespectful, but I think I'm gonna look at the
Yes.
clock. I'm already gonna be 15 minutes late.
Okay.
I'm just gonna,
Okay.
thank you very much. Sorry to move on.
That's fine, thank you. Now I'm going to switch on to Sarah. I'm sorry, Jesse, you also mentioned anything to do with sustainable as far as the amount of impervious pavement that you have today. It'd be great to look into more permanent paving surfaces as far as addressing public health, which Sarah alluded to as well. It's public health in South Dallas, definitely a big issue. It looks like they're very wrong. So I'm going to switch to Sarah at this point and focus on reforestation. She mentioned Texas trees, and that these are not just shade and things like that, but they're environmental justice issues. And she mentioned South Dallas has another public health issue. So this is a great way to inform South Dallas that you're concerned about the public health. Also push for more lighting under 45. She did see it'd be nice to have a special tree at East New Lawn and things like that. She sees those best investments for public health. And again, she asked questions about the bikes, things like that. Sarah also mentioned that she loves the Florida Street Association, the energetic trail. If there's any details or opportunities for increased green infrastructure, especially in visible and demonstrative areas such as rain gardens, things like that, that would help set a good precedent. We'll also say comments from Jesse and from Sarah.
James agrees with Sarah and Jesse. The success he sees will be a safe connectivity. The success of the entire project is the safe connectivity between the community and Center itself. There are still some areas where SMRI 45 and okay, like it's a 12-year-old getting to the site, with a mom trucks and think that should go to the site. And James mentioned also that dead-end streets can be a bit of a challenge. So, you know, how that works as far as its usability. Keep that in mind that those things can be difficult. Fossil also mentioned the turnarounds and things like that. We have to work with he was concerned about those things too. I mean, in general. Other things too that James mentioned about the east facade that didn't quite feel quite urban enough. That it's there's a concern that visually and physically and the frontage itself. What are the opportunities that can make the east facade work with the community itself? Same thing was mentioned by Norm as well. So I think that's important to take a good look at that. Norm had some pretty interesting critiques about that. Let's see. Kate mentioned, thank you for the work that you've done. She does have a good association understanding of Flora Street in the DMA in our district. But there's still concern that Harwood, maybe with materialscape or just the way it's still laid out, is still a utilitarian space, still feels somewhat back of house. I believe that's what you mentioned. So it's a lot of work, and the truth is, you're loading it is those things too, but maybe materials and things like that might think it differently. Sure don't want to have oils and things like that. She didn't mention that, but it's a lot because, you never want the bad stuff to be out there, but it's exposed. It's hard to get the public there if it feels like a house. Let's see. Also, she mentioned that as far as redesign, make sure that there's activate any situation with 45 Harwood the associated areas. She also discovered that the property that's between TxDOT and Harwood, it's TxDOT, things like that. And you're trying to have a vision for that, but that. So there's. She also mentioned. I'm sorry. Kate, that there's no predominant entry, that try to prioritize 2 entrances instead of just 4, so pull back a bit, and that the start entrance will always be the larger appeal of what we do. So let's see, I'm trying to move quickly. Here we go. Fossil had mentioned there's 13 spaces that have angled parking off of okay. To provide his recommendation is to convert that to parallel spaces so that you can either use it for a drop off and pick up. So you go from 13 to 7. But he also mentioned that you may have opportunities on the frontage road for more either parking spaces or also drop off as well. So he also brought up points about the 4 handicap spaces. You'd mentioned it was pretty flat close to the building, that the ramp would get there. So he had some concerns of obviously as far as ADA's accessibility. Some heard about several folks too. Which I'll answer that pretty well. So, and he also brought up the whole service into the building as far as turn around. He said he loved the rooftop. Norm, also thank you for the project. This building, Forest Theater, has architectural, historical, and cultural significance. It says what you're doing is setting an example of what is to come, not just what we have, for what we want in South Dallas. Again, he brought up, just like James said, elevation. Are there opportunities to really front the neighborhood? These wall spaces, do they have canopies? Do they have other things? And he was looking at the marquee. It's really your draw from the marquee itself, whatever, let that be your inspiration for all around the building itself. So it's not just in one corner. His harshest critic was the lights on the side of the building, look too much like an office warehouse. They want to make sure that we pay homage to early 20th century idea. Hugo brought up a good point as far as all 4 sides of the theater is very difficult, especially if you don't even have back of house. So you try to activate all 4 sides. He also brought up the point they were a little too late, obviously, for this critique. And he also brought up a point as far as the comments about the complex itself. Should we have had a master plan first or a vision plan? That vision plan could have helped inform the building programming as well as design. They also brought up again, Florist Street and Harwood Association. It took some time that Florist Street really didn't activate itself, even though the materials that were there in the Sasaki plan. It took a while for the activation to happen, all the programming buildings around it. So just keep that in mind. He also brought up a point of how do we weave the context? And again, that last comment about the four sides being different. I'll mention about historic constraints as well. So we all applaud that you have a challenge and that you've gone very far on this. I think it's bottom line, but maybe you should summarize better than I do, Rico.
Thank you.
That's as quick as I can do it. Well, Jesse, I missed one.
Yeah, you left out my little rant about facade shading.
Okay. Oh, I apologize. Okay. Thank you. We're being recorded, I hope. Okay.
All right. Okay, you will receive a summary of your comments as well. I know that you're taking notes, that's great.
I don't have any, yes.
Sorry, I read it off, so the comments will be shared with everyone. Anything else great from our side? I think we are concluded. And once again, thank you. Good luck. We want to see performance. We'll be there.
Or excited.
There you go.
Thank you.
Great exhibit.